in this meeting. Starting off, why does this conversation matter right now? Downtowns, of course, are navigating rapid change. Retail, ground floor uses, and consumer behavior continue to evolve post-pandemic, and our goal is to stay proactive, informed, and aligned locally. So today's forum is focused on learning and insight, what's working for other downtowns throughout the United States, what data is telling us about Vancouver's ground floor activity, and how can we use this information to strengthen a vibrant and welcoming downtown. So we'll provide you with a first look at early insights to emerging trends and opportunity areas, but these aren't final conclusions, but a foundation for future discussion and action. So a quick overview of the agenda. We'll have the national retail trends presented by Main Street America and a local analysis by BAE Urban Economics. And then we'll have time shared for understanding and dialogue. And again, of course, thank you so much to the City of Vancouver for partnering with us on this work and introducing our co-host here, Chris Harder, the Deputy Economic Development Director at the City of Vancouver. All right. So folks are still joining online, but starting off, our first speaker is Mike Poe. Mike Poe, I have the opportunity to work with through the Main Street America Network. He's the Senior Director of Research at Main Street America. He leads research that demonstrates power and the potential of Main Street communities nationwide. And he has over 15 years of experience in studying the physical fabrics of places. And he's going to dive today into the Main Street America USA 2025 Small Business Survey and national trends and how communities are adapting from the retail lens. So I'll hand it off to Mike. Thank you, Mike, for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. So nice to see those of you in the room. It's kind of weird to see the backs of your heads or the sides of your heads, but I can see that you see me. And for folks online, yeah, thanks for being here. I have some slides to show. I'll try and move quickly, but if there's questions, I hope there's time for question and answer. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. Michael Walker, could you give me a thumbs up that you can see
the
looks slides?
Good. Perfect. Yes.
Looks good. Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, I'm Mike. Thanks for being here. I'm mainly going to talk about the fall 2025 small business survey we ran nationally for Main Street America, but I'll speak to some of the broader trends as well. And just to get started quickly, for those who don't know, so Main Street America, of course, supports Michael and the work that you all do at the Vancouver's Downtown Association. Vancouver's a great member and a great representative of what the Main Street approach can be. There's a lot of text on this slide, but suffice to say, we have a national network. We're missing just a couple of states across the U.S. More than 1,200 organizations, depends how you count. I think we have more like 2,000 organizations that follow the Main Street approach. And we're a national association supporting all these organizations. The work on the ground locally is where it really matters. So it's all about sort of fostering strong local economies, sort of building on existing assets and strengths in older and historic buildings, really just trying to lead a revitalization movement and try to make people, recognize the lovable places they have in their own communities and support them. So I have a slide on small businesses and a slide on Main Street America and our relationship with small businesses, and then I'll get into some of the results from our most recent survey. But just to kind of set the landscape here, so across the country in 2025, I think it's safe to say that this is a very difficult environment for small business owners for all sorts of reasons, some of which are listed on the screen. It's economic uncertainty, the tariff situation, consumer confidence, I think, is low, high interest rates. There's issues with supply chain. There's issues of healthcare, price of healthcare, immigration and workforce issues, yada, yada. There's a lot going on, and none of it's really particularly favorable, I think, for small business owners. There's a recent trend, especially in the last few months, we're seeing clearer data that the highest income households account for most of the spending, consumer spending, the sort of discretionary spending. And I think data shows that households at the lower sort of brackets of the income spectrum have declining spending. Only these like very high income households are really increasing spending or staying level. Some emerging retail trends. We recently did a study in partnership with an organization in Virginia. So we sort of tabulated some of these things, but millennials are sort of a dominant spending group, generationally speaking, these days, but Gen Z still shapes kind of the culture. And so, on the retail side of things, transparency, environmental impact, the stories and experiences behind products are still really important. Considerations as consumers make decisions. There's also this buy less, buy better. So we see evidence and trends of consumers are buying fewer products, but aiming to find things that are more sort of high quality, more robust and durable. And then we see this sort of across retail a move toward really personal, practical in-store retail experiences. So this is things like demonstrations of products, like sampling of especially products that are made in-house or on brand. This plug-in spaces is a phrase that my colleague Matt Wagner came up with. It refers to sort of the civic and social sort of function of not just third spaces, not just places people want to get out of their house or be away from work, but places where people want to build sort of civic identity and togetherness. Those are sort of just really, really brief, pointing to some trends that are kind of taking shape across the U.S. I'm going to dive into what I know a little bit better, which is sort of the Main Street America relationship with small business owners. And I'm going to use small businesses and Main Street businesses interchangeably. I'll speak in just a moment to how I think there's slight difference, but it's clear that small businesses are the backbone of the local economy across the U.S. and especially in Main Street communities. They're one of the core ingredients of what makes Main Streets special. So across our network of 1,200 some odd districts, including Vancouver's, there are more than 200,000 businesses, and they represent about 2.2 million jobs. That is roughly equal to the number of jobs at Amazon and Walmart combined. So Main Street actually is, small but mighty and but dispersed. We know that local Main Street leaders like Michael engage small business owners every day. This is part of the job. For Main Street America, our direct engagement with small business owners is really actually pretty new. We began my job was created in March of 2020 before we knew there was a pandemic underway. So my first week on the job was something like, I think it was that very first week of March. So the job changed really radically, and we really did a lot of direct engagement with small business owners via our national surveys. 5.5 years later, we are almost 25,000 responses to surveys. So we have a pretty good sense of things. We're also launching new programming all the time. So entrepreneurial ecosystem work, this is ways to support entrepreneurs and small business owners and sort of building a support system of multiple organizations and entities. And we have a small business hub platform launching online early next year. So we're trying to do a lot more to support the local work from this national level. So the stuff I kind of know really best and the stuff that's most recent is this fall 2025 small business survey. We sent out the survey October 9th and closed it October 30th. So an important note about the findings, the survey was conducted entirely during the government shutdown, the federal government shutdown. So it's possible that finds its way into some of the findings in terms of unpredictability, uncertainty, sort of concerns about the state of things. I'll get to that a little bit more later in the slides. We heard from almost 1,300 small business owners, at least one business in 48 states, plus DC, plus Puerto Rico. Thankfully, we had 59 respondents from Washington State. So I'll speak to some trends we see, but nationally and in Washington. Our survey in the fall included 30 questions, some basic stuff about location, business type, or owner identity. We asked about profits and revenue trends. We asked about e-commerce and business owner confidence. We asked a bunch of open-ended questions also. This is one thing with AI where we can not have to read 1,300 paragraph long responses. We can get some sense of what the broad trends and themes were across all this data and then draw out some quotes. So you'll see some of that in these slides as well. So what is a Main Street business versus the small business? The Small Business Administration at the federal level defines small businesses in this way that incorporates, I think it includes businesses with up to 500 employees, depending on the industry. It includes businesses that have up to $1 million or $2 million in revenue, depending on the industry. Main Street businesses, who we typically hear from, is a very different segment. We hear from businesses that have fewer than three full-time employees. In this most recent survey, that was 72% of our respondents. We hear from business owners from different business types. 42% retail in this survey. In Washington State, it was more than half of the respondents were retailers. But food and beverage, professional services, arts and entertainment. I think Washington State, we had an outsized proportion of fitness and wellness and outdoors kind of businesses. But generally, a Main Street business is one that has very few employees, has pretty modest revenue, and is really kind of the mom and pop, that expression, mom and pop businesses really applies here. Some other key facts about Main Street businesses. So more than half have an annual revenue of less than $200,000. We hear that 82% have fewer than 10 employees, including part-time and temporary employees. They also contribute back to the local economy in ways that I think larger businesses do not. So 70% of the respondents to this recent survey said they contribute to local causes. Two-thirds thereabouts, especially two-thirds in Washington, hire locally and use local vendors. 72% of respondents, again and again across our surveys, about 70% of all the businesses are owned by women. So this is a women kind of led movement in a lot of ways, Main Street is. We saw nationally about half didn't use e-commerce in this most recent survey. In Washington State, notably, it's 39%. So in Washington State, we're kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to adopting e-commerce. So that's sort of like what a Main Street business looks like. When I talk about the business owners in this survey, I'm talking about these like mom and pops, these often, one location, often really kind of modest revenue. I hope that fits with y'all's expectations and kind of how you see things as well. So the four big finding themes I'll cover. First, we see that there are revenue and profit challenges for Main Street businesses. And as a result, along with that, Main Street business confidence remains near its all-time low on all the data we've gathered, especially among those smallest businesses. We asked about how businesses were approaching the holidays, whether they were changing their preparations relative to previous years, and heard about some anxieties that folks are feeling there. We asked about sort of what their big wins were, what their big challenges were, and heard a lot from across all these questions about the sort of broad underlying trends that are sort of rattling operations and shaking people's kind of confidence. And then, we do see evidence that small businesses that have support from local Main Street organizations like the BDA, they actually have demonstrably higher confidence and have better sort of revenue outcomes. So I'll just speak to that briefly. So that first theme about revenue, about profit, about confidence. So we've asked this question a few times now. In our most recent survey, we saw that close to 40% of respondents said they had decreasing revenue. Only about a quarter said they had increasing revenue. And then when you look at profit, the numbers are more dramatic. So about 45%. And if you look at those that sort of had a steady or decreasing profit, it's close to, 75%. In Washington State, actually, the evidence is the data is a little bit more dramatic. So in Washington State, 42% of respondents had decreasing revenue, and more than half had increasing net profit. Kind of want to pause there just to note that's a pretty dire situation. I also show on this slide the data from our spring survey. So we asked the identical question, looking back at the previous 3 months. What was your revenue trend? What was your profit trend? And the numbers were a little bit worse than they were in this survey. And what that says combined is that this has been kind of a hell of a year. Like it started off rough and it's ending pretty rough. So we'll talk at the very end of this slideshow about how the most recent 3 weeks have gone since Small Business Saturday and Thanksgiving. Um, Maybe there's some reason to be a little bit optimism as we get to the holidays, but yeah, curious to hear from folks in the room. We can break out these revenue numbers and look at sort of how the trends play out by business type, by number of staff, et cetera. So we can see that retailers, for instance, had fewer of those businesses had steady or increasing revenue. So retailers and food and beverage businesses were at 55% of those said they were steady or increasing revenue, compared to 62% for professional services and 63% for all other kinds of businesses. Same trend for the smallest businesses, those with one or two full-time staff. Um, Same with folks who started a business before 2016. And I'm going to show the Washington State numbers, just add those to the bottom here. You'll see, just looking across again, the numbers are more dramatic, just like we kind of pointed to in the previous slide. So 43% of retailers said they had steady or increasing revenue in Washington State. That's quite staggering. More than half when it comes to retail and food and beverage said the same level. Looking across, you see, yeah, number of full-time staff, 53% is lower than that broad number. And support from a local Main Street organization is one kind of bright spot, depending how you look at it. So those businesses that said they do receive support from the local Main Street, like the VDA, 69% of those businesses said they had steady or increasing revenues, compared to 52% of those who did not have that support. And we've asked about small business owner confidence now for 7 surveys going back to fall of 2022. And you'll see that over the first 4 surveys, the average was about 7.6 on this 1 to 10 scale. And then in fall of 2024, it dropped. And then spring 2025, the bottom really dropped down. This survey was done in spring, in April. It was right when the tariff announcements were going out, and there was a lot of confusion, a lot of consternation. So we've seen some rebound, a modest rebound for this fall survey, but still the second lowest on record and in the data. And then when it comes to Washington business owner confidence, I didn't pull all the data going all the way back, but we were consistently lower than the national numbers in Washington State. I'm based in Seattle, I keep saying we. You saw a bigger drop for spring 2025, and then a rebound again, more robust rebound to fall 2025, but still half a point lower than this the index overall across the country. And just a couple more on confidence before we get into some qualitative information. So this is breaking out that 1 to 10 score of confidence, where 1 is not at all confident and 10 is extremely confident. So you see retail, food and beverage, again, lower than the broader numbers, the numbers overall. Smallest businesses have lower scores. Interestingly, those oldest businesses that are 10 years old or older had higher scores. You might remember they had lower revenue. Lower proportions had steady or increasing revenue, but they have higher confidence. We've sort of been through things before, I think. You see that support from a local Main Street organization also makes that solid bump. And again, the Washington State numbers, oh, sorry, it says 6.1%. Should be 6.1. So retailers are feeling a real shortage of confidence compared to the other groups, especially. Again, smallest businesses in Washington State's 5.3, so a point and a half lower than the overall numbers from the country. And you see, again, evidence from where you have support from a local Main Street organization. Sorry to go through these quickly, but I want to make sure we get through everything. So the next couple of findings are really going to focus on the qualitative story we're hearing from business owners. So it's safe to say that as folks are approaching the holiday season, they're feeling a lot of anxiety about generating revenue. So across the country, 40% of the respondents said they had pre-ordered a lot of inventory to manage expenses, sort of mitigate the cost of that's added from from tariffs and to deal with supply chain issues. They were eager to sort of generate some revenue from that inventory they were holding. We heard that folks were focusing on marketing and promotions. Some folks said they were using new products or new approaches. About a quarter nationally said they didn't have a planned change in their preparations leading up to the holidays. And again, this was asked in October. So now that we're in mid-December, sort of chance to look back at this and think about how these things have played out. So I do have a slide here that's going to focus just on the Washington businesses, but nationally, we heard this like eagerness for sales. So a Wisconsin retailer said they bought way earlier, sitting on like excess inventory, so stretching the books. In Vermont, we heard from a retailer who said they were ordered more and earlier, so sitting on a lot of inventory for longer than usually do. And in Michigan, they were forced to order and pay for holiday merchandise in the first part of the year. Means they're holding debt, means they're really anxious to get some sales from that. About a quarter, like I say, of all the national respondents said they were focused on marketing. So they were trying to go big with decorations. In the case of a California retailer, making a bigger push online with holiday products in Arkansas, using AI to support their holiday marketing in Kansas, and then kind of leaning on decorations, trying to get people in the door, trying to make things fun and exciting and upbeat in the case of a Tennessee retailer. Changed approaches. In Idaho, we heard that folks were using more American-made and fair trade products, focusing on pre-sales, going less seasonal with their merchandise, and bringing in this one from Indiana, bringing in more local vendors and other businesses that have been forced to close their doors. We've been ordering all year long in hopes of holiday season will be big. If it's not, we'll be closing our doors. So like other businesses that have shut down, they're trying to support their community by offering sales of those vendors' products. Fairly heartbreaking. In Washington State, actually, the findings shook out a little bit differently. And I didn't dig into this very deeply, but based on a scan of things, actually in Washington State, 40% said they're ordering less inventory. There was more focus on reducing spending and trying to just be really conservative and really thoughtful and deliberate about purchases. So I think we heard from folks in Langley, Chehalis, Camas, Cheney. So focusing on what you can make in-house instead of buying some seasonal, trying to be more mindful of purchases and buying less, more streamlined in offerings. About 35% of Washington said they were either not changing anything or that this was their first holiday season. I would love to have a moment at the end of this slideshow to kind of hear from folks in the room whether this aligns with what they've seen and felt in Vancouver and other communities in the area. But I'm going to try to get through this really quickly here. So a third finding is this sort of national macro trends that's really kind of shaking things up. So we asked these total of 4 questions, or actually 5 questions if we include the broad open-ended, like any other comment question. So we asked, like, what's something you're proud of that your business accomplished this year? What's the biggest challenge you've faced in the last year? There's that holiday preparations question. And then we ask about that confidence, that 1 to 10 score. We ask, like, why did you give the confidence score that you did? What makes you feel as confident as you said you are? How would you characterize that? So across these questions, we sort of categorized how many respondents mentioned some form of instability. And so whether we're asking about points of pride, challenges, holiday preparations, business confidence, the number of folks who are mentioning these broad sort of factors of environmental, political, social, environmental instability, it was 30%. We had 4,000 sort of open-ended bits of data. 30% of those mentioned something along those lines. So I'm going to run through and show just some of those that came up. I'm going to try and focus on some Washington businesses and all of this. So when we asked about what are you really proud of from the past year, folks would point to they've grown despite an unstable business and investment climate in the country. That was a Washington fitness, wellness, and outdoors business. Someone in Tennessee said they've stayed afloat in the last 12 months in a very inflationary period. When we ask about the challenges they've overcome, in Oklahoma, they talked about affordable daycare and that workers couldn't work evenings and weekends if they didn't have access to something that was affordable for their kids. We heard in Missouri from a personal services business that the cost of living has driven down bookings for personal services. In California, we heard that they've lost a team member due to ICE immigration enforcement. So, workforce is being impacted, consumer demand is being impacted, things like the affordability and childcare is impacting that workforce. Um, when we ask about confidence, what do we see? Low confidence, sort of average or mid-tier confidence, or high confidence? We'll see, a Delaware business that said they had low confidence, said the economy is tanking, our goods aren't necessities, people aren't really shopping. In Washington, a retailer said everything seems to turn political. I actually feel like this quote is something I sort of feel I see across Main Street. So decreasing sales, increasing expenses, everything seems to turn political. It's hard to even post photos of books on social media without angering someone. It's the divisiveness and the sort of in the fabric of the country right now. And then the government shutdown, inflation, the economy, all issues making someone nervous, a Michigan personal service business owner. And then when we ask about confidence, whether it's average confidence or high confidence, people saying people aren't spending as much, so they're not really sure, but they're feeling more or less confident, confident in ourselves because of the roots they have in the community, but worried about the economy, consumer confidence, the country's future. And then even those businesses that said they had really high confidence, and I'll highlight this Washington food and beverage business. They said, I believe we can remain relevant. I have confidence that we can weather a recession because of the space we provide for people to connect and enjoy quality food. So even if you're like really confident, you're pointing to the factors that are sort of underlying all this and kind of shaking things up. And then last finding before I do this brief epilogue, I hope I'm not running too long here. Um, Small business owners who receive support from a local Main Street have higher confidence in their business's future success. I already sort of highlighted these points, but I wanted to kind of just show it on a slide together with some qualitative information. So those folks that said they did receive support from a local Main Street program had a 1.2 boost in the confidence score in Washington State. And 17% of those businesses that said they get that support said they had stable or increasing revenue, 70% higher than folks who said they did not get that support from local Main Street organizations. So I think just Main Street matters. And Michael, I applaud you and the work you're doing in Vancouver with your team. I think the last I was down in Vancouver, it just feels like a Main Street in all the best ways. So pointing to a couple quotes here that folks shared about the role that Main Street plays, pushing folks to shop locally, not go with the big box or online giants, and just saying they appreciate Main Street and all they do support small businesses. I'm not trying to pat Main Street America on the back, more like wanting to pat local organizations like those in Camas and Stevenson and Vancouver. So yeah, thank you for your work. And just a brief note in sort of epilogue and in closing. So I wanted to offer something that pointed to the picture since we ran the survey in October and pointed to Small Business Saturday specifically. So we have access to this database from Placer.ai, this smartphone location. So they track locations of people who use certain apps on their phones, and they can make projections, they can make estimates of how many people are visiting a district in the US at a given time. So I went back and looked at Vancouver's downtown since 2018, every small business Saturday. And you could see the numbers in 2018, 2019, it was 23,000, 20,000. At the pandemic in 2020, it drops to about 6,000. In 2021, there's a rebound, but not all the way back here at 16,000. So I'm burying the lead. The 2025 was a banner year, was the best year for Small Business Saturday in the 7 or 8 years of data we have on file here. You can see the average dwell time, how long people stayed in the downtown district, is about as high as it's ever been, 2 hours and 9 minutes in 2025. So I'm hopeful. I just wanted to offer something that was Vancouver specific and spoke to more recent data. So I hope that folks are feeling some sense of rebound and some greater sense of levity or lightness, some sense that things aren't as awful as they could be. But the data from the survey is just still hard to swallow. So I'm Mike. I'll stop sharing my slides. I don't know if we have time for questions now or after the next presentation, but thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us, and especially providing that contextual information about Small Business Saturday. We definitely did a bigger push this year, and that's interesting to see it reflected in the data. So thanks for sharing that. I want to open it up to the crowd if there's any particular questions.
Yeah, actually, this is all really good data, and a lot of it actually backs up what we've been seeing in terms of like kind of honestly a downturn in and a difficulty of small businesses with the economy and cost of goods going up and everything like that. But the last slide data that you had about the dwell time and downtown, I'm curious about that. Does that data break down into like more specific data points, or is it just like the number of visitors and dwell time? Because just out of curiosity, because like obviously from our perspective, our 2019 was very good until pandemic shut us down. 2021 was a pretty good rebound year. We came back really strong. 2022 and 2023 were our biggest years. 2023 was our highest year, like by a vast margin. 2024, we were at roughly half of what we had done the previous year. We took a 50% hit. That was when the economy took a much bigger downturn. Yet we're seeing that the visits and the dwell time were roughly equivalent or higher than the year before. And then 2025, we definitely have seen a rebound from 2024, but we're still nowhere near where our 2023 numbers were, even with a higher number of people being here and dwelling longer. Like, I'm just wondering if there's any data about like what people are spending. Because like depending on like how many people are trafficking through or what they're doing, the spending habits don't correlate with that, at least as far as our business is concerned. Plus, on top of that, we have rising costs. We have additional taxes added, like B&O taxes going up, like things that our costs of goods are never going down again. Like we paid, 50% or more over what we paid when we started with the pandemic for everything. So I'm curious if those data points break down to more than just dwell time at the station.
Yeah, thank you. Are you a retail owner or a business owner in the district, in the downtown district?
We own a bar right on Main Street.
Okay. Okay. I wish I was not the giant head on the wall and actually a person in the room. I feel like so to answer the question, yeah, the data can be broken down. We could segment and look at just those folks who stayed for a long time. The data doesn't from Placer at least doesn't tell us much about spending. It tells us what they expect people to spend, but that's not helpful. So I'm kind of curious so I would say as my answer to your question, like, that's I can offer this national data. I feel like it's a great conversation to have with Michael in the room and with other folks locally to kind of talk with other business owners about what they've seen. I think it fits what you described, really fits with the overall picture, both the fall survey, national data. I mean, the sort of really macroeconomic data about it doesn't surprise me that people would come out and spend less or be making fewer purchases. I think that fits. So I don't know how much more I can offer beyond that, but I wish I could be in the room to hear you and Michael talk and hear more conversation amongst the owners.
One real small follow-up. I'm not going to take more time, but I guess the spending data wouldn't be in there. But is that data available of like where people were going during that time? I would be curious just to see where they are going and like what they are doing, because that is a significant increase in the number of people, but we're not just reflecting that in the traffic in our business. Like, so I'm just curious. This data is really fascinating. Data points are awesome for business owners. Like any additional data you can provide is super helpful for us.
We obviously post this data too, so we can make sure you have.
Oh, cool. Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Does Vancouver have access to Placer? Do you have access to the foot traffic data?
There's adjacent partners that have access to Placer AI, so I can definitely with them to see if we can delve into that. And for folks in the room, Placer AI gets its data sets usually through cell phone traffic. From my understanding. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from folks in the audience today? Great question, Matthew. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. It's not a question, but I just attended an economic forecast, a real estate economic forecast, and looking from 2018 to this year. And your graphs were very similar to real estate, consumer confidence, interest rates of when, they were going down, then consumer confidence went up. I mean, the graphs are like almost identical of when people were shopping, because when interest rates were high, they weren't going to the bar. They just weren't going anywhere, really. Yeah.
Well, the cost of goods got raised on us a lot. So we have to raise the prices of our, just drinks and food. We went to a point where it's like just to make a profit. Danny's whispering on you, keep saying the state. I'm done. I mean, that's not the point here. The point is that like everything's gone up, and that has to pass on to the customer, which sucks.
Yeah.
Like there's a point where it's like I don't want to charge someone $10 for a draft beer, so I just won't do draft beer. I'll buy bottles of cans. They're somewhat more economical, or it's really tough when you have to charge someone $16 for three chicken strips and some fries. But that's what we have to do to cover our overhead. But I also get it. A customer could be like, I can buy a 12-pack of White Claws for the cost of 2 that I can get at your bar. So like a lot more people I think they might come out for like a drink or 2, but they're not staying all night.
They'll drink before they go out.
Yeah, they'll drink before they go out, which is a liability for us because they get there and they're not drunk yet. They've had a few drinks. They come in, they get one, and then we have to deal with the idea that they're overserved. That's a problem for us to deal with the liquor control board. Or they'll leave our place, they'll go to their house, they'll party there. So it's like it's definitely a big effect. I mean, like the overall rise of the cost of doing business is pretty tough on small businesses, and it's like we're a really successful business by any like metric of how bar business. We do a lot of business. We're one of the busier bars in the state of Washington, right? And like we're still like just barely there. Like it's wild to I don't know how people are staying in business in this market right now.
I appreciate those comments. Thanks for sharing that.
The data is great, though. I appreciate it. It's really good
Yeah.
points. It's useful to see.
Yeah.
I'm glad the data would be helpful. Yeah, it's painful. Yeah. One can only hope based on see the curve and the business owner confidence, and if it matches with consumer confidence, one can hope that things bounce back. Especially,
Hopefully,
some of this is a little self-inflicted. So I feel like if we can weather the storm, things could improve. But I know it's difficult.
That question where I was like, what are you most proud of doing this year? Like the funny thing is we were like staying open, and that was the answer. Like getting through it. That's real. Like every small business owner I know is like making it through 2024 and like making it through 2025 is like an accomplishment. Like it really is.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mike. We're definitely lucky to have you in our presence, especially being with Main Street America as their Senior Director of Research. So thanks for bringing in your report and going over the findings. We really appreciate your support, and we're lucky to have you today on our panel. So appreciate your time.
All right. We're going to switch as Matt and Chim Chun make their way to the front. I'll introduce them. Similar topic, focused on downtown, kind of the storefront, active retail component of our downtown, but with a little bit different perspective. Matt Ferris is with us today. He's from BAE Urban Economics, and a colleague of ours from the city, Chim Chun Ko, is one of our senior real estate project managers. The two of them, along with the city more broadly, did a downtown redevelopment study in 2025. We presented on, Chim Chun, I think you presented on that. Was that this summer? Several months ago.
To this group, I think it was in September.
It was in September, several months ago. And what that really looked at was long-term, what are the nodes, kind of high opportunity areas for future redevelopment of downtown. A lot of this is kind of contemplating some of the data that we're seeing through the comprehensive plan process, number of residents, population increases, those type of jobs that downtown is supposed to support, et cetera. As a follow-on to that, we wanted to make sure we were getting smarter at what is the ground floor experience like in our downtown district. That drives a lot of small business sales. And so we're having them do an analysis for us, kind of a gap analysis. looking at more traditional things like food and beverage, retail, and also exploring other uses of ground floors, maybe small batch manufacturing, different things like that. So with all that being said, they are in the midst of their project and going to share kind of a little bit more about it, kind of where they are, and then have some questions at the end if I described that correctly. And I'll turn it over to you two.
Thank you all. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, this is really a scope of work that is meant to be a follow-up to the downtown redevelopment study. I think one of the findings of that study was that there's a lot of properties downtown where the land value is a lot higher than the built building value. So I think we'd expect those properties to redevelop into something new at some point in the near future, depending on kind of all the stuff we just talked about with economic certainty and real estate trends. But I think as part of that, understanding that there may be changes to the downtown built environment, we want to make sure that as that's occurring, we are still ensuring that those developments are built in a way that can support local small businesses, and we're not losing sight of that and creating displacement or gentrification issues as that growth continues to evolve over the next several decades. That is not something we specifically focused on as part of this study. It is several buildings are registered under the historic, landmark state and local lists that help preserve buildings with historical significance. So I think our assumption was that those existing processes would protect those buildings that are registered and identified as significant. So we're more focused on the buildings that don't have those protections, and we assumed were less historically significant since, I don't know. But with that, I'll turn it over to Matt to go over our initial findings.
Great. Thanks, June. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I think this is a great opportunity to we're really launching into our study. We've done some very preliminary findings, as both Chim-Chun and Chris were talking. We've been working with the City of Vancouver for 2 years now on a variety of things, really mainly focused on the future of downtown. So this is the kind of where we're at with the active ground floor study. Want to kind of use this as a dialogue. I'll go through a presentation. There's some questions at the end. I can kind of just get through things quickly, and then we can open it up for conversation. So with that, from just a quick agenda perspective, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more, the team we're working with, because we are working with a range of different team members throughout the region. Talk a little bit more about the project, what we know about downtown from some of our prior work, both sort of real estate market conditions, some of the redevelopment potential, where that energy is and has been over the last kind of real estate cycle. We then are also using this opportunity to zoom out a little bit and look at local and regional economic development trends. So how can downtown be not just a host for kind of growth, but also from kind of the meeting the city and regional economic development goals? So how can we kind of tie that into this downtown active ground floor study? We're going to present some initial findings and kind of ideas that have come to light when we look at national case studies, sort of what are other cities like Vancouver doing to activate the ground floors, especially associated with sort of new and revitalizing areas. We're going to outline our next steps and then look to you all for some feedback on how these different kind of ideas can come and be a real sort of economic engine for the future of downtown. So with that, just a quick little slide about us. So Matt Ferris, BAE Urban Economics, VP, been with BAE my entire career. I've been in Portland for 4 years, working exclusively with cities throughout the Pacific Northwest. As a company, we've been around since 1986, and we're in 7 different cities. So you sort of get this, like, I'm on the ground locally, really understanding the who's who and what's what of Portland. And then I can also bring in some of my team members. So David Shiver is based in our San Francisco office. Sherry is in our East Coast office, who can kind of advise on what's going on nationally. We only work with public entities on things like public-private partnerships, market analysis to understand, like, where is the market going, both with retail, office, industrial. What is the financial viability of new development or redevelopment or investing in historic properties? And we've got some other sort of avenues that we work on: community vitality, community benefits, and affordable housing. I do want to acknowledge that we are leading a team, which also includes Bricks Need Mortar, which is a Portland-based small business advocate and consultant. So half of the work that Bricks Need Mortar does is actually with small businesses, helping them grow, find new space, do tenant improvements, seek grants. And then the other half is working in these types of situations where they say, well, now I'm in touch with so many different small businesses, I can sort of help cities understand what they can be doing to support downtown businesses and kind of the small business avenue. We're also working with a local sort of architecture, engineering, land use and design firm who's going to help us understand, are there certain elements of the city code that doesn't allow people to build the types of spaces they want to build? Are there certain requirements or certain impediments that the city can adjust to allow and sort of incentivize, the development of some of these spaces? So from an overview perspective, as I alluded to, we're sort of just getting this going, but we're reviewing current market conditions and economic development goals, both for the city, the region, and specifically for downtown Vancouver. We're identifying some of those sort of national, regional market trends. So I think even the Main Street presentation just before this was a great kind of conversation about what's happening nationally around downtowns and retail specifically, and how those are impacting the success of ground floor spaces, especially as we densify and we try to build taller buildings and use our land more efficiently. That's leading to sort of challenges and opportunities with ground floor. We're going to identify some of the actions that comparable cities are taking to promote some of those ground floor spaces, and then really bring that all back locally and say, what of these ideas will work in downtown Vancouver? What are the conditions here? What are other cities doing that maybe aren't going to work in downtown Vancouver? And what are other cities not doing that maybe will work in downtown Vancouver based on some of our research? And then lastly, this will all get wrapped up into a report that will recommend strategies to promote and support existing businesses here, continue to thrive and grow, and then what kind of actions can support existing businesses and future business generation in the ground floors of downtown. So just wanted to go through some stats that we've been seeing. Let's see, these are not too small on your screen. Just really, really high level. This is vacancy in downtown with retail. So you've got in the black sort of dotted line is the whole metropolitan area. So that's Portland, Vancouver, Hillsborough metropolitan area. You see that retail vacancy has sort of reached almost 5% in the region, but you see both the city of Vancouver, which is the darker blue, and downtown Vancouver, which is the lighter blue, actually doesn't have much vacant retail space. So it's not about vacancy. It's not that we have a tremendous amount of vacant space. It's just that there's sort of opportunities as we continue to grow. It's not about tenanting existing vacant spaces, identifying opportunities as new spaces arise. We do see kind of a fairly similar trend with office. It's just everybody's office vacancy is increased. So the black dotted line is the region's office vacancy. That's about 17%. Locally, when you look at both downtown Vancouver and the city of Vancouver, we're much lower, but we still do have, around that 10 to 12% vacancy specifically in downtown and the city. So this is some of the work that we did for the downtown redevelopment assessment, looking at who is building, where are they building, what are they building. We know there's been significant amount of investment in new, predominantly multifamily development with a couple of office projects in the downtown, sort of sprinkled throughout, obviously a concentration on the waterfront, but certainly quite a bit of development sort of in and around the Main Street corridor. But those are predominantly 5, 6, 7-story multifamily developments that are coming with their own ground floor uses. Some of them have been used very vibrantly, very actively. There are other situations where new development, the ground floor feels kind of dead. It hasn't been that attractive to retail establishments. So trying to figure out where are those opportunities, what are people building, and what kind of opportunity does this lead to for the future of downtown Vancouver, especially the ground floor. This is kind of one of the maps that I think was asked about. This is a map that's showing where we think, solely based on sort of demand, but also improvement to land value. So where's the value of the land more than the building itself, which would seem to indicate redevelopment potential. This is a downtown area that has quite a bit of new development potential. It could be breathing life into existing historic buildings. It could also be building new dense development in areas that are sort of currently being underutilized, vacant parking lots. So there's quite a bit of redevelopment potential, which brings great opportunity to increase economic vitality, bring new residents to downtown, bring new businesses to downtown that will support the existing cluster and also continue to grow what we think and create that identity of downtown, but also this opportunity to to think about the ground floor spaces in those new developments and preservation efforts. So what are we seeing from kind of a national trend around ground floors? Again, this kind of ties back into the Main Street conversation. When you look at new development, there are certainly new development projects that are delivering that are not thinking about their ground floor spaces very well. The spaces are cold, dark, low ceiling heights. They're really not accommodating new businesses. So new development really requires the right standards that are going to yield spaces that meet demand of specific tenants. And we can go into that. We're going to kind of dive into that in our study. As was previously alluded to, there's sort of a shifting demand for traditional retail. There's more online spending. What it means is, as we grow, there is not one-to-one sort of induced demand for retail. So we may need to think about flexibility with ground floor uses. May not continue to be just retail and restaurants as we continue to think about our downtowns as development builds out. I think a really critical thing you see across the country is that ground floor retail doesn't work everywhere. You can't just build ground floor retail, put a boutique or a restaurant in there and assume it's going to work. You need to think about new development and strengthening our existing nodes, like a Main Street. But as development builds out several blocks off of Main Street where there is little current retail, maybe there's an opportunity and a need to think about a different type of use that can create its own economic vitality, but also bring people to downtown. So it really forces cities to adjust retail locations where they want retail and restaurants, and as well as tenant expectations. So this is sort of the last sort of background slide, but this is really what the city, when we zoom out and look at, well, how can downtown also meet economic development goals? We look at the city of Vancouver just approved their 5-year economic development strategy, really charting out a path for sort of the future of economic development in the city. A couple of key bullet points that we pulled out from that report: just ensuring that Vancouver's economic growth is equitable, so it's supporting smaller businesses, current businesses. Focusing on living wage jobs, I think, is a really critical part of our study. So how can we both meet economic development goals like living wage jobs, but also active ground floors? Those don't always come hand in hand. The city identified a specific industry clusters in addition that'll meet some of those living wage jobs. So that's things like advanced manufacturing, computer and electronics, clean technology, software, life science. Those aren't traditionally thought of as being in downtown, but we're going to identify, and we are seeing national trends where cities are trying to attract these businesses to being downtowns, to what kind of manufacturers or clean technology users want to be in downtown. And we're going to be looking at that through our case study work. The city also wants to obviously support entrepreneurship and small business creation. So part of the growth and the economic development goals for Vancouver is supporting what we have now and supporting our existing businesses and people and residents continue to grow. We then zoomed out at a regional entity. There's a Columbia River Economic Development Corporation that's really thinking about job growth and industry growth. Their goals: expand existing employment base. This is specifically for Clark County. Support the existing people and workforce and a workforce that aligns with the regional entity and the industries that are going to work and projected to grow here. And then certainly capitalize on investments. You think about the new bridge, the Main Street Promise project, other investments that the city is making, that the region is making to support economic development, and how can we capitalize off of those? And I think downtown really has an opportunity to build off of those. The other side of the equation is the workforce. So there's a Workforce Southwest Washington. They just did a study analyzing what they're calling the quality jobs framework that actually is incorporated into the city's kind of living wage framework. So what are those quality jobs? We want, as we grow and we create economic opportunities, we want quality jobs that are paying living wages, good working hours, good working conditions, and they highlight specific industries that they're hoping to support, which is advanced manufacturing, clean energy. Again, you're seeing kind of come up over and over, as well as healthcare. So just kind of setting the standard, the stage for what the city and the region is thinking in terms of the future economic growth of this region and how it can be equitable with living wages. So this is just a kind of rapid fire through some of the initial findings that we're seeing across the country. Essentially, every city that you look at is dealing with this same question. As we continue to grow, who is going to succeed in our ground floor? And what you end up hearing, and I'm sorry to come here and say this, but there is no silver bullet. You can't just open up and create a more flexible zoning and then everybody comes to downtown. but it requires a multi-pronged approach. Some of the things that cities are focusing on is focusing on and strengthening our existing nodes. We need to highlight what's working and the areas where businesses are thriving. And then outside of those commercial nodes, we need to think about potential flexibility. So you're seeing a lot of cities move to allowing ground floor residential. That brings more people to downtown, more residential units that can support those existing users and the existing businesses. The other very prominent trend is really expanding that flexibility and thinking about ways where cities can attract a range of sort of non-traditional downtown businesses that do actually potentially fit into the fabric of a kind of maker community in downtown. So we've listed a couple, and I'll just spin through a couple of examples, but you saw that advanced manufacturing idea come up over and over in the city's economic development plan, the region's economic development plan. You see a lot of the sort of city of Portland is really focusing on the manufacturing community in our urban areas, so that kind of small scale manufacturing. Food and beverage manufacturers, your brewers, your distillers, your chocolate makers, workshops, maker space, museums, galleries, medical, education, childcare, and civic uses. And I just have some examples here throughout the country. So you're seeing advanced manufacturing actually coming back to downtowns, being located in a ground floor of a multi-tenant or mixed-use building where you're doing small-scale electronic prototyping, woodworking, automotive manufacturing. These spaces require certain elements and features of them that traditional builders don't provide: enough power, enough water access in order to support these types of businesses, and yet they can function here with the right sort of design and the right building that meets their needs. We see food and beverage manufacturing, sort of small scale food and bev coming back to downtowns. You've got beverage manufacturing. There's some examples of chocolate manufacturing. There's a couple very prominent examples in Portland of very urban chocolate manufacturers, as well as coffee manufacturers, et cetera, just as examples. We're seeing museums and galleries sort of taking up the ground floor that create this active space. All three of these being from this region, sort of more art museum that's very interactive art. So there's that space we can talk about: galleries, artisan space, retail, etc. We're also seeing, especially in areas that are densifying, if we're only building residential, we're increasing the population. That population needs medical services. And medical services have historically, and we see this throughout the region, are sort of located in these campus-like settings. But there are examples of very dense areas as they're densifying, figuring out ways to create partnerships to bring medical to the ground floor of some of these buildings. You see that this urgent care is on the right of your screen is from the Seattle Metro, where there's an urgent care occupying the entire ground floor of that building. So now you have new residents, a fairly active ground floor, and you have medical services that meet living wage jobs for the medical providers and a better quality of life for the existing population, who can now go to urgent care within a walking distance or within a short drive rather than needing to drive a long ways. Obviously, in our metropolitan area, we have OHSU, who's occupying the ground floor of towers, as well as there's pediatrics examples throughout this region. We see education and healthcare. So I know previously was mentioned in the Main Street conversation, unaffordable or lack of access to childcare. How can that be both an economic development goal, putting childcare in either ground floors or sort of communal spaces? We've seen in this region as well, university, colleges, schools taking up ground floors as well, pre-K. And then lastly, we see civic uses. There's a real opportunity here and a need for the public to get involved. Some of the most innovative P3 public-private partnerships that are happening throughout the country right now are the cities and counties building rec centers and libraries in the ground floor to create an active environment and these amenities for these growing urban areas. These are just two examples of housing over library. There's a great example outside of in Silver Springs, Maryland, where there's an entire community and recreation center with a tower of residential above it that I think provides a sort of unique new look approach to what are we doing with the ground floors. So I just want to outline, clearly we're very early in our process, but we're looking sort of nationally around what's going on. We're going to work with our team to bring all of this back together, collaborate with many of the folks in the room today about what are these opportunities for downtown Vancouver, identify what of these strategies really align with the local conditions and the goals, and then compile our recommendations into a report that's ultimately going to lay down some of the background information, what are we seeing from the data, provide these case study cities, tell this whole story that leads to these sort of strategies and recommendations that we're making for the city of Vancouver to support some of these existing, or support the existing, as well as thinking about laying the groundwork for the future of downtown and the storefronts. So with that, I'm here sort of seeking feedback from you all. There's nothing like getting feedback from folks who are in the downtown, who are activating these ground floors as we speak, to think about what ground floor uses do you think align with the future of downtown Vancouver? What kind of uses do you think sort of work that with the existing fabric of downtown Vancouver? What some of these ideas are resonating, and how can they both work with the fabric and support existing businesses like yourself? And then we can get into some of these other questions about what can the city be doing, and other things we haven't looked at. Have you all learned of other cities that are doing interesting stuff? Have you tried to open a business in Camas who has been more welcoming than Vancouver? Or are there examples that we should be looking at, or additional business types that we should be thinking about as we continue to think about the future of ground floors in downtown Vancouver? So with that, I'll open it up, or if anybody has other comments, we can just open it up to the room.
That's cool.
Yeah, in the back.
Couple things. One, initially, when you were talking about the downtown itself, and you're talking about the vacancy rate, how are you defining downtown? Like, what's the boundary you're using?
That boundary right there, hopefully you can see that outline. So that is, it technically aligns. It's a little bit of a funky outline, but it aligns.
I see that green line.
Yep, the green line. So that's the city's technical definition for the central, for downtown Vancouver.
How are you defining vacancy? Because I mean, I saw the number, and it, like, when you look at that number, when you actually go downtown, you count the number of businesses that are for lease, it's like significantly more than that. What, like, so what is considered vacant, or what is, like, it's because, like, if it's a place that's for lease, then that's a much higher number. Like,
yeah. I will acknowledge that this is coming from a sort of national database that tracks real estate trends, and they don't always do the best in urban areas.
Yeah,
and so we're not
worried by landlords, then that data might be 10 years old.
Absolutely, yeah.
That makes sense. Like, I mean, because like the actual vacancy rate in downtown is way higher. You just go out there and count the number of like empty storefronts, and that's higher than that.
Yeah,
okay, that does make sense.
Yep.
I think something we struggle with in downtown too is just not having uses that are maximizing pedestrian traffic. So maybe it's like offices, for example, that have their blinds drawn. But I understand your sentiment, and I agree with it.
Yeah.
Chim, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna on the data. It is focused on leasing activity that's happening online. So if they aren't posting the leasing activity online, the database probably doesn't capture it. So that could be part of the discrepancy as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, just empty storefronts stuff. Okay, I got you. I'll let someone else go on.
Question that's been very patient.
Mm,
Is it okay?
Please, yeah.
And I'm not sure if you know Matt, but this is Rachel. She owns Hook and Needle. It's a shop right off of Main Street on Broadway. And she's wondering if in your study, did you include the Schofield building that was recently demolished? Used to be Top Shelf on Main and 6 on the corner. Did that happen to be in the study at all?
In terms of the potential for redevelopment?
Yeah.
If it's the one that just got demolished,
Yes.
it is not showing up in this database as one that would meet. Now, we did overlay certain building features and aspects, whether it was designated historic that even could have been locally. So I can go into the background of that one, but what it ended up actually working out in downtown is that any site that had some sort of use, especially if it was multi-story, just the value of that multi-story building, even if it wasn't super well utilized, was higher than, say, some of these half-empty blocks with parking lots. So we sort of ended up using a threshold that may have been too high for a site that had a multi-story building on it, even if it wasn't very well utilized.
And from my current understanding, there are plans to redevelop that site into a mixture of possibly a food hall and a hotel concept, from my current understanding.
Just wondering what there is to see in a hotel in Vancouver, because it's pretty boring, but here's my question.
Please.
I've been to New York, I've lived in the Bay Area, I've watched downtown be overdeveloped with housing overpriced that nobody can afford. So is that the goal, to make Vancouver downtown unaffordable with a bunch of businesses going out of business and going to Idaho where they won't be taxed out of being able to function here, on top of all the building of the mess that's been going on with construction that they've halted just for now, just to pretend. But it's really gonna be just the biggest mess, especially if they do the bridge thing, which is another 10 to 15 years of construction. So we're talking for you, I mean, are you guys gonna just add to the mess and raise the price? Because when I go to downtown Camas, I love the novelty of the Liberty Theater and the old fashioned buildings. And here we have Kiggins. It's a nice retrospective, you know, of the 50s or whatever. Are you guys gonna try and modernize everything? Then it gets shut down because downtown Portland was worth 6 billion. And now they screwed it up enough, it's worth 1 billion. So you may want to do all of this, but are you guys gonna make it go from 3 billion to 1 billion too?
So I think part of what we're doing is the map that Matt showed with all the redevelopment potential. That is primarily privately owned land. So we as a city don't have a direct influence. Yes. So part of what we're doing is understanding that this is something that is likely going to be driven by economic conditions and private landowners. So we want to make sure that we understand that this is the potential outcome so that we can plan and try to prevent some of the cost increases. And if solely the private market is involved, we expect people to maximize profits as much as possible. So our role is trying to figure out, understanding that that is kind of how these opportunities play out. We're trying to figure out how we can
How do you make it
work.
work when you can't park right? There's construction everywhere. Like I said, in Portland, even though they did all kinds of things. And I know the Vancouver's doing all this stuff for tourism. And like I just said, what's there to see in Vancouver? Because honestly, when you get to downtown area and already in Vancouver, we have a major rat problem. And I mean, rats like this all over, just right down here by Share House. So, I mean, is that when you're inviting people to come be tourists in Vancouver to look at the rat infestation or Edge Shore Park? We have no tourist attractions. You know, I mean, in Portland, what do they have for tourist attraction? I mean, Seattle has a Space Needle. What do we have? And then the people who come and visit, what are they gonna look at? Were they gonna shop at Edge Shore Park and rent a hotel for that and overpay for parking? I mean, if you guys wanna bring business, then you gotta think differently because obviously copying all the other models is failing. Like I said, Portland went from 6 billion to 1 billion. So what do you guys want to do? Invest a bunch of money to have these things collapse, to go into bankruptcy and people being priced right out of their homes and their apartments. And I don't think that anything should be developed in downtown without a notarized letter to everybody living in that Smith Tower and all the people living up and down and see, do you guys really want this to become a wannabe downtown San Francisco where I myself saw people dying.
Okay, well, we appreciate the feedback and the questions. Can we redirect it to a slide that has those preliminary questions that you offered here?
Yeah. Real quick on that last slide, you might want to mention some of these properties you had that were, those are getting absorbed by the bridge project just once.
Yeah.
No, appreciate it.
Julia?
Hi, Julia. I'm at Living Room Realty on 6 between Washington and Maine. Made a couple notes. I guess this is more like a bigger conversation. But to your point about historic buildings, I think before you came in, they were talking about how there are many registered historic buildings and those buildings that are registered as historic, like I would imagine Kiggins is, and I know the building that we're in was restored and it should be registered. And I'm sure there's a lot of buildings like that. So that would be something.
Did they say they're gonna tear them down or keep them?
Well, if they're historically registered, they're not gonna be torn
No
down.
touching.
No, so there is that, and also that is an attraction for downtown Vancouver. People come down to see the charm of some of these older buildings but also like to some of these ideas that you were asking for, like, I mean, there's so many different things, but what are we doing to attract workforce to downtown Vancouver? Because Southwest Washington has like the best job growth right now in comparison of all of Portland Metro. Like, what are we doing to attract like jobs in specifically downtown Vancouver? And I guess you addressed that a little bit with tech and schools and healthcare, but the Instacare that was just on Washington is gone, and so is like the pet hospital.
Yeah.
So those things are gone. Are we going to bring those back? Because otherwise we have to drive somewhere else to go have that done. And then another thing, because I've also been in a couple of meetings in downtown Portland about, they were looking at this whole Vienna model. And I don't think that that's realistic. And obviously in the short term, that's like a 100-year plan, but is the city planning to do any land banking for any of the public services? Yeah, okay. And then also like what is working for businesses right now? Like you mentioned that there's gonna be a survey that goes out and people will make comments, but do you know what is working in downtown? And like what kind of attractions that you plan to build or add to downtown? Because I think what's happening at Esther Short Park is great. Like there's constantly something going on there. And I just live right downtown and it's always nice to see something going on, but what is working?
Are you talking about from a like tourism visitor perspective?
What
Yeah.
is and what businesses are working downtown? That's
Like which ones are
Yeah.
successful or not? Not sure we have like this business versus that business in kind of that moment. And yeah, we can get sector information. We anecdotally hear things from small businesses. So I think that probably provides a more of a follow-up answer to that. In terms of visitation, tourism is led by Visit Vancouver. So that's their role. So they primarily they support events and festivals. So a lot of what happens on Esther Shore Park, but other areas is a key support there. They do a lot of marketing and promotion outside of the region to draw them into the region. They lead programs like Dine the Couve, trying to attract individuals downtown or to different parts of Vancouver. They represent the whole county, and those types of things. They do again, not my data. Our visitor economy is growing on certain metrics. A lot of people come here for events and festivals. Some come and stay here and access a lot of outdoor experiences that you can from this region. So there's a host of things why people visit. Is Vancouver a top tourism market relative to like a San Francisco or even a Portland or those? No.
It needs to be,
Right. Yeah.
but
So
I feel like there's a lot going on down here.
yeah,
and
it's
it
a
continues to grow.
it certain metrics.
Are there like another question? Sorry, just one more. Like,
Oh,
are there plans of bringing other businesses, like by businesses I mean like retail that are mom and pop, like say to the waterfront?
But that's a charm as well.
Because the people that come here for conferences and there's a lot of restaurants, but there's not retail, and I think that's the one thing that's really missing.
I mean, that's part of what this study is, helping us get a better sense of kind of what's working, what are the gaps, what are the options, and then kind of forming some things around that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what this is starting to ask those questions around.
I think from like a thought exercise perspective, it's as you know, when you go to other cities in the country or other cities internationally, what do you see that's working well? Like when you go to attractive downtowns, what's the business mix? What are unique experiences? What are those destination-oriented businesses that attract folks that are so unique that folks are willing to seek them? I think about like Northwest 23rd. It's like people are willing to park their car and walk a pretty good distance because the experience is so good or it's such a unique business, they're willing to seek it. So it's like, how do we garner those and what do those look like? So from your perspective, we're kind of curious about what do you guys see as the
And I
future?
will say, you asked about promise. I know we're in the midst of the construction and we got to find our way kind of through that. But some of the investments there are to be able to block off streets, hold festivals, events on things like that. So we do see Main Street, whether it's the whole 10 blocks or maybe we're blocking off a block or something like that, as something as what I would call a tourism asset or event or festival asset that the city can use. Different but similar perhaps to how Esther Shore or parts of the waterfront or other areas are used.
Sir, did you have a question?
Yeah, I want to make sure I think saw a couple of hands up
So,
back there.
number one, what are you basing the wage on for living wage?
Great question.
I don't know if I have that number off the top of my head, but the various reports have it as sort of like above the median. I think that number was something in the like 85 grand a year. Above was a threshold for
And you're
living
saying that
wage.
that's what the city of Vancouver earns, because the average wage here is $24 an hour.
That would be
Yeah.
That would be,
$37 an hour to afford a $1,700 apartment.
Yeah.
The Columbia did some great articles on that,
Yeah.
but I'll give you some suggestions.
But-
Number one, you need to have somebody run your projects that actually knows what they're doing, because I've been in construction my entire life. And your Main Street Promise has been a disaster for businesses, and I've never seen something run so horribly. Honestly, that thing should have been done in like 6 months. Secondly, if you go to Billings, Montana, or even into Japan, right, they have festivals, okay? And Billings, Montana has a thing called First Thursdays, and you cannot believe how many people. It is insane. And they have 4 bands set up on each corner of the town. And there are so many people that come there and spend money, right? Another thing that the city has failed on is our 4th of July celebration. We're having a 250-year anniversary of America this year, and we're not even gonna have fireworks. You know how many people that brought to downtown that spent money? It's unbelievable, and we're having no fireworks. So I gotta just go across the river to Portland, to the Willamette River, when they do the fireworks for 4th of July. And they do the fireworks for the Rose Festival, and it's unbelievable. My friend's got some bars down there, and he made like 150 grand in one night, just on the 4th of July. That's money in his pocket in one night. And what business do you know that makes that kind of money on downtown? Part of the problem with downtown Vancouver is you guys close all the restaurants down at 10 p.m. People don't get out in summertime until 9 p.m. to go eat, and then you got parking on top of that. You cannot go down and eat a meal and enjoy the waterfront in 2 hours' time before you've got to repark or repay. And the employees I've talked to down there don't want to work down there because they've got to walk so far to avoid the parking fees down in downtown Vancouver. I mean, my friends and I, we used to ride our motorcycles down there. There's no parking for motorcycles. We'd spend $1,000 in a night at one of those restaurants down there. I don't drink, but they did. We'd have a nice meal. They'd have a few drinks, and we'd go rally on to some other place. We don't even go down there anymore, because every time you go to park your motorcycle on the sidewalk where you can actually see your bike without somebody vandalizing it, the police come and hassle you, and you got to move your bike. So, I mean, there's things that you can do to attract people. Esther Short Park, yeah, they have some festivals, but really nothing I want to go to. I mean, I want to go to a car show. That's your biggest successful event in downtown Vancouver, is the Vancouver Cruise In. That thing is huge, and businesses make money up and down Main Street. It is packed. People want to go see cool cars. They want to see motorcycles. They want to be able to cruise their cars. And yeah, it makes some noise for a night. You know what I mean? But the businesses are certainly not suffering from it. And when you look at the Main Street Promise, that thing's been going on almost 2 years now. And all those businesses down there, you know, Matt's bar over here, you know what I mean? He has suffered miserably, and now they want to come back and redo that project again. So now he's going to be hindered again for what, I think, fourth time?
No, we're done on our street, but we did lose half of our patio space.
Yeah, so now what
I
are they
don't know
gonna do?
why.
Make you have a permit to put something up?
Well,
So
we got
people can
more
actually
sidewalk
dine
space,
outside?
and they reduced our sidewalk cafe area by half. So,
Yeah.
which we still aren't, we don't
Yeah.
understand why that's.
And that's what I'm saying. You gotta be able to work with business people. You know, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense to them, right? And the other problem is our state legislation, this legislative session is gonna try and pass a tax that says if you make $125,000 or more, you're gonna pay 8.9% annually in income tax. And if you've got $1 million in realty, $1 million in the bank, or $1 million in investments, they're gonna do the very same thing. And what you're gonna see is a mass exodus, if that passes, of business people out of this area, because nobody in their right mind would pay that kind of tax to stay here in Vancouver or even the state of Washington. And you're already seeing it. I mean, you go to Boise, Idaho, the stuff that they've got going there, they've got 7 Fortune 500 companies there. They've got a job at Micron going right now where they're paying $277 a day in per diem for electricians to come there and work. What do we got going here? Intel's pretty much shut down. We got over 1,000 people on our out of work list, and no business down here. There's not a tower crane anywhere that you can see. There's no business here. Nobody's building anything because it's unattractive. So you got to figure out a way to attract businesses and lower the taxes. And I'm not talking about building more apartment complexes, because your whole waterfront down here, I bet there's only a third of the people down there living. A lot of that stuff is vacant because it's way too expensive to live on the waterfront. Way too expensive. But you're right about the retail space. Women want to go down there and see some really cool shops that they can go into and buy clothing or whatever they want to do. That's what attracts females to areas like that. 23rd was a great example. Man, you can walk up and down there and there's no Diesel Jeans place down here in downtown Vancouver. There's no Nordstrom's. I mean, all that stuff is moving out of downtown Portland because it's a failure. Nobody wants to go down and see a bunch of homeless drug addicts, begging for money. They just don't. And your place right down here where they've got them all down here by the share house, it is a disaster. All those people that have moved in and signed a lease for those apartments, how would you like to be one of those people that signed a lease to live there and have that out beside your front door every day? So we got to clean the city up.
Great feedback, a lot of topics, so
Yeah.
appreciate sharing that. I do want to just make sure we get to some other hands raised, so appreciate that. In the hat, Michael, and then we'll go you in the red coat, orange coat next.
I apologize. I think it's important for everyone to be heard, but I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. Like, it is a diverse downtown, so a lot of those examples you mentioned, I'd push back a little bit on.
Which ones?
I'm a business owner downtown, and I know it's hard to run a business downtown, but I think if we look up a little bit more favorably on this process, it's going to benefit myself as a business owner. And I can talk to you afterwards.
Sure, the answer, sure, it's going to.
But I'm just kind of inviting us to a couple things. I want to say thanks, because I think the Main Street project, by and large, is going in the right direction. Like, definitely some challenges, but we're gonna end up in a good place. And I think we just want to acknowledge there's a diversity. Because like the cruise-in, great event. But for us, it was terrible. Like it would, for a climbing gym, that closed us down.
That's different.
So that's not a reason to not have it. Love the event. I just point that out is, let's just acknowledge there's a diverse experience downtown.
Sure, but I'm
you know.
just saying, like I
so
said,
businesses.
it's one time a year that cruising comes.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
just, again, I'm just mentioning there's a diverse amount of experiences. And I would hope, like, I'm not completely on board with everything I'm hearing with you guys as well, but I'm hoping in this time we can find some more like constructive, like, especially what you guys are talking about. Like, I would love to hear more specifically what these guys can do, because I do worry a little bit about the lease rates going up.
So you think, yeah, that's a major thing.
That's,
And
'cause I see-
struggle with police.
yeah, I do see like what I hear you guys describing, I would say largely goes a little bit against that, what we're hearing before, where we have small retail struggling. So the direction I'm seeing right now from you guys, I don't know what changed that direction. So, because I know it's easier to come in as a small retailer when you have an affordable space. But when you have a new space that's $30+ a square foot, small retailer's not gonna come in. So that's, again, just kind of focusing on where we're at with this conversation. That's just one thing I would like to offer.
How long have you been in business?
Since 2011. So, and again, I don't mean to make this about like different businesses, who's better, or I only offer, like, there's just a diverse amount of experience. Like, your experience is gonna be very different than
Oh,
mine.
yeah, we do.
Right, and a residential experience is gonna be different than mine, and, so I think just the conversation that you guys are having, we might miss the opportunity to give you the feedback that, that is just the one thing I was offering.
I mean,
Makes sense.
maybe they should have like a kids' day downtown, like the Dozer Days. If you've ever been to that and seen the amount of kids that show up to climb all over that heavy equipment, have a kids' day downtown that you can attract to your business, because my kids loved going to your climbing gym.
Good.
I mean, they
I
loved it.
appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Just great feedback. I just want to get some hands popping up. I think you're very patiently waiting. Your hand was up.
I was wondering if your percentages and your results included the fact that downtown was ripped up for how long has it been disturbed?
It started January of this year.
And also there's this looming shadow of the possibility of downtown being affected by the bridge. And that has been looming for almost 2 decades.
Yeah,
Correct.
at least since the
So
90s.
the bridge and what might happen is a concern to somebody new coming in. And we are already losing money, losing income because the property has been deemed that it's going to be raised. So it's not going to happen when the bridge happens. It's going to happen if the bridge happens. It's happening now because that property is not going to be there. So, and downtown is going to be disturbed by the bridge. So I'm wondering if these percentages and the results of your studies have reflected that the shadow of the bridge since what, 2012?
At least, yes.
And the fact that downtown has been ripped up for a year.
And will be 10 years.
I think from a numbers perspective, it really depends on kind of the quality of the data, but I think that's why we have these conversations. If I just sat in my office and pulled data from a random database, I wouldn't really understand what was going on the ground. We've been working with the city for 2 years. We're involved and aware of the bridge project, aware of other investments, aware of property that the city owns. And I think this is why we're doing the study. This is why we're trying to figure out how can we help folks like yourself find a different space or a new space or stay in your space. Like there is space in downtown. There is likely to be future space in downtown. How can we make sure that it works and that it's functional? And how can the city be an active player?
And it's affordable.
And it's affordable, absolutely. I mean, I was going to make that prior comment earlier about making sure that spaces are affordable. What kind of things can the city be doing to make sure it physically works for businesses and the business types? Climbing gym needs tall ceilings. Is that going to work in the ground floor of a building? Seen it done. It's not super popular. So, okay, that's one that may not work. But some of these other ideas.
So I was just wondering if the report that you're giving us has taken, for our area, for Vancouver, has taken any of this impact that we're experiencing every single day. If that has been included in those sales reports and projections.
Yeah, the data is kind of existing conditions to the extent the database reflects them. So I think theoretically it does incorporate those impacts. Seems like there may be some discrepancy between kind of what people are experiencing downtown and what the data shows. So it could be gaps. But like Matt said, that's why we're having these conversations to kind of make sure that this data is or is not reflective of the actual conditions.
That is an interesting point, though. How does future mega projects impact the overall condition of that's happening in downtown, and how is it taken into consideration as we move forward? We have about 2 minutes left, Matthew, and then.
I just had a couple of bits of feedback, just based on this, when you talk about like ideas, like alternative business and stuff. So it's somewhat alarming a little bit because you get to talk about how like ground floor retail doesn't work everywhere, like a retail restaurant doesn't necessarily work everywhere, which is true. But at the same time, like retail restaurant has always been kind of a barometer for like health. And like the idea of saying like it sounds like you're kind of like, oh well, like let's just okay, so that's not working. So what else can we put in here? I mean that discounts my business as well, but like that's just like bars, restaurants, retail aren't working anymore. That's not. That's more of we're looking at a bigger problem. The problem is the economic health of like the average person being able to come down here and spend their money. Like people will spend their money. Like restaurants and retail have always been a pretty good sign of, like I said, economic health because that's where people have disposable income. They will go places, they'll do it, and all you have to do is provide them a place to do that, like a good centralized location. So like hearing like looking like what about like art galleries or like workshops or. I mean, like, or healthcare, or like state-funded, schools, or like, what was the other civic centers? I mean, like, I don't mean to be rude, but it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, like, if people aren't coming down to go to retail and restaurants, they're not going to go to an art gallery. Art galleries are privately funded. They're not like there's not like there's a lot of people being like, I really need to open another art gallery. Like that's not happening. It's not a thing that drives traffic or commerce anywhere. It does. They are part. things like art galleries and like boutique shop spaces that make local goods are a sign of really good economic health. Those things appear when there's a lot of disposable income. Like the idea of like, oh, let's just throw these things out there. These could be ideas to put down here. Like, where are you going to get those people to come in and do that? They're not going to be making any money either. That's not that's not the problem. Like the other issue, like I see with that too, is like, I mean, medical's its own problem. They're in a crisis right now too. There's a massive staffing problem within the medical industry. Like we're not like the medical industry, nobody's like investing in opening new like urgent care centers or smaller healthcare centers, privately funded healthcare centers because it's too expensive. And like, yeah, healthcare is something that's need for everybody, but nobody has the money to pay for it. Like these things are like, I don't understand or like, why, like I'm not seeing what you're looking at here from our perspective. You know, it's like the thing that is, and it sucks because it is a macroeconomic thing. It's like there's only so much we can do on a local level with local government. But I mean, the best thing like the city could do to help is to like help take some of that burden off small businesses. I mean, like the lease rates going up at like astronomically is a thing. I don't know how some of these businesses are supposed to stay in business when they have a lease. It's, you know, some of these, like the waterfront leases are outrageous. And you know, people came in there, they knew that doing that. But those have been driving up the leases over here as well. Like when you're paying $23,000 a month for a space, the amount of money you're gonna have to make in selling your goods as well as covering your overheads, I don't see how feasible that is in a market this small. And like I know I hear the concerns about tourism, but like you don't have to think about Vancouver not necessarily as like a national tourism center. It's a local tourism center. It's a place where people like you know, people from Portland will come up here, but like as soon as waterfront was here, they'd like to come up here. It's a place to come up and see. And if downtown is vibrant, it is a place they want to see too. People will do that. Just like, you know, people from Vancouver will do local tourism in Portland or like to downtown Camas or whatever. Like if that is a local tourism thing, it doesn't have to be like, you know, massive attractions. Like we don't need, you know, a Space Needle or a theme park. We just need like a vibrant economic community for people to see and do something else. The Main Street project, I mean, is the idea behind it. I think this was a good idea. I mean, the plumbing and definitely need to be done regardless. I've got my problems with how it's been done. Like I don't see how I mean, it arguably looks better. It's the curbless design I have my own issues with, but I'm not going to get into that. The biggest problem I'm seeing with it is that it so far has been a net loss for our business on Main Street. I think every single business will tell you it's been a net loss overall. Like whether or not that comes back in case out in the long run it was something we all were kind of like, okay, we'll get through it, and we did. Our biggest problem right now is like for you guys, it's not an issue. I mean, you guys got a bigger sidewalk, you got like be a nice frontage and everything like that. But for a place that's, you know, food, beverage, hospitality, we all rely on those cafe permits on those sidewalks. And now everybody on Main Street's had their cafe permits reduced to literally less like we were told the outer space was going to be for furnishings, and that our cafe permits would extend to the edge of where the sidewalk is. So we'd have them on the inside and the outside, just like we did before. We used to have tables on the inside and tables at the edge of where the sidewalk used to be.
And that was a promise from the city.
It was. We have that in writing. We have it on video. And we have renderings. It's on the renderings of their street project.
All of the restaurants are concerned about that.
Well, yeah, and so then we find out a day before we're getting our cafe permit rezoned that they're actually going to reduce the size of our cafe permit to less than half of what the sidewalk is, so that we don't get that extra space, and that we're actually losing space. We've gained space on the sidewalk, and they're removing our cafe space. That's a vital part of our business. Like, we don't understand what the purpose of that is and why the city is pushing that. I don't understand who benefits from that. We were able to stay within compliance with 6 foot right away before when we had the smaller sidewalks. And it's also interesting because, you know, like Main Street is the only one this is affecting. Like all the other businesses on the restaurant on the side streets still have their full patios. I've been trying to get answers from somebody about this. And I don't know what the thinking is behind it. I don't know if you guys could talk to that, because that's something that you definitely do that would help support at least retail and restaurant downstairs, or like restaurant, food, beverage, hospitality. But without it, actually is a huge hit for all of us. Like I said, it's not just going to affect retail stores or climbing gyms or anything like that, but that affects us directly.
We can chat directly after this. We are over time.
I just
appreciate it.
Say one more thing. I'm sorry.
Nick,
I
but
feel
go
that
ahead and
the
interrupt
city could help with parking. I feel that they could have given a moratorium on
Seconded.
parking while all of this was going on. And I think the city should have stepped up and helped us have people come down, because that new parking plan on Saturdays and Sundays, it's hurting everybody. and the fact that nobody wants to come down, and when they see a mess, they stay away. They go to East County instead.
We've had a chance to talk about that in the previous one. We do have data that we have more people coming downtown, but we were willing to touch base on that. But
I
yeah,
just want to talk about. I understand is the cheapest one I could find was about 90,000, which is the price of a luxury car. Which means if you could put a good 5-10,000 on jetpacks and flying around, you wouldn't have to worry about parking. And it's another business opportunity. If you want to open businesses, why not be the first in the nation to offer jetpacks so that you won't have to deal with parking and congestion in traveling to and from work.
love
It
it.
has to
We
be.
need an entrepreneur for
Today
that.
is the
You know,
21st century.
I wish we were in the Jetsons. Yeah.
18th century that still uses trains and buses from the early 19th century. This century, we can do jetpacks and we can open a jetpack business manufacturing place. And that could be your, where in the nation do they offer you a jetpack?
Somebody go.
No parking problems and, during bad weather, just go park somewhere and wait.
I've got one thing to add here, just one.
Thank you.
Where have all of you been to festivals, to places like Deadwood City, South Dakota, during Sturgis Rally? You know, all these different areas, 23rd Avenue, like you mentioned, I'm sure you've been down there. Seattle, Washington, First Avenue, anywhere across this country, there's some place that everybody goes, right? So where have all you been and what would you like to see in the city, since you're the ones doing the study, right? Where have you been? You look, I mean, you look like you might be 32 years old, right? You know, I've lived a lot of life. I've been a lot of places. I've been a lot of fun places. My whole life's been fun. But I'd like to see what everybody else likes to do. You know what I mean?
Bring
And-
back the 4th of July.
Absolutely. That is the biggest thing. And
Yeah.
I do want to make one
I
point.
tried to
If you
bring
noticed
this up.
last year when they did no fireworks and said we were gonna do no fireworks down here because there's no fireworks, there's a whole fireworks ban on the entire city.
Yeah,
And that would be a good leading example to prevent fireworks. Like what happened last year? Everybody shot fireworks off all goddamn night, all over the city.
All right.
Like, that was.
I want to,
Just-
lively discussion as always. Appreciate the feedback. We are over time. We will, we do this every year, so we'll be coming out with a new schedule. Are we doing a survey again?
Yeah,
Well,
often,
yeah, you, why don't you talk about it?
yeah, at the beginning of the new year, we'll send out a survey.
Hello,
and,
do phone people get to speak?
we're wrapping up, but what do you guys want to push? Put your question in the chat and we'll address it from there if you can. All right, so at the end of the year, we'll put, or at the beginning of the new year, we'll be
Yes,
sending out a survey that will allow folks to provide their thoughts on topics of interest for the downtown. We had 10 topics of interest this year, and we managed to get through all of them. And going into the new year, we hope to address new topics or go deeper on existing topics. So please keep an eye on our channels for that. If you're on our newsletter, you'll be getting that directly to your inbox.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can we, the people that were on the phone, speak a little bit?